has doubts, whether they should devote their whole life to anything, I think. On the other hand, there was never much question that I would be a musician. My elder sisters are both professional musicians. My father was a very keen amateur violinist. My mother was a piano teacher. My grandfather on my father's side was a famous pianist in his day and composer. And the dog, he was probably the most musical of us all, actually, our Dandy Dinmont Terrier. He used to howl with such feeling. I think I learned a lot from him about how to play expressively. The first classical piece of music I fell in love with, as far as I remember, was the Dvorak Concerto. And I had this record of Rostropovich playing it with Sir Adrian Boult conducting. And I used to listen just to the first movement, that over and over again. I remember a big favourite was the Brahms D minor piano concerto. It still is, but when I bought this record of Clifford Curzon playing it, and I put on the record, and I jumped out of my skin at that first timpani exclamation, and I love that, of course. So again, I listened to the first movement of that every day for ages. I was like most children, one gets obsessed with one thing, and one listens or reads again and again and again. Why do you fall in love with somebody? There's no explaining. I mean, apart from that, Schumann was a genius, and as creative and as individual as any composer. You cannot categorize his music. His roots go well back into the past, but they also go way into the future. He can just dream aloud in music. But on the other hand, he's absolutely rock solid formally. I mean, he absolutely knows what he's doing. His imagination has no limits. So he knew the music of the past, going back to De Lasso and things. I mean, he performed it as a conductor. He conducted a choir. He did all this ancient music. He was steeped in the ancient music, but what he wanted to express sort of required sometimes strange language. I mean, it's really futuristic. As a young cellist, you listen to records of all the major concertos. So I listened to various performances of the Schumann Concerto. I could hear it was very nice music, but I just couldn't remember a note of it. It just made no impression. It would go in one ear out the other, which often happens with me. And then somehow I heard Casals's recording of it. And, it's not one of his best recordings in a way. He was about 80 when he did it, and there's quite a lot of strain, and I certainly don't play it anything like he plays it. But it talked, it made sense. And suddenly I could remember almost the whole piece. It was extraordinary. That's probably the strongest example I've had of that happening to me. So I loved it ever since. But my first time I tried to play it was a disaster. I played at my college, Oberlin College in America. It was not good. I practiced too much for it. I think I was just too nervous. But all that practice paid off in the end. And by the time I came back to it, it's starting to feel familiar. Now I probably play it more than any other concerto. I adore every note of it. I think it's such a moving, gorgeous piece. Schumann, I think, is the most confessional of all composers, really. I mean, he said that everything in his life came out in his music. If I'd met Schumann, personally, I probably wouldn't have got to know him because he was so silent, he was so awkward, he was wonderful, I mean, incredibly kind and generous, but a social disaster. So the way one gets to know him is through his music. The concerto was written at a very good time in his life because he just arrived at his new job in Dusseldorf, and at that point he was enjoying it. He was on a high. So there's a lot of happiness in this piece. There's a lot of love. I mean, it is like a love song, I think. But there is darkness, especially in the central section, the development section, one calls it, of the first movement. That's a real journey. It's very different from the other movements. You go through a journey when you begin with these chords from the orchestra, just like the sun rising, and then you start. The cello sings its love song, I think. So it goes. That's so gentle and wonderful. The phrase becomes stronger, and it ends with a big flourish and goes into the orchestral first tutti. It goes... It's very different. And then the cello comes in after this big tutti. Cello comes in sort of, no, can't we be gentle? Or... takes us back to the land of dreams. This leads to the middle section, the development section, in which it becomes much more disturbing, the orchestra's energy, right from the beginning. We've had a sort of fairly ecstatic from the cello, that's a happy bit, but that becomes, in the orchestra's hands, in the beginning of the development, and then there's something more threatening about it, I think. And eventually, unfortunately, the aggressive, warlike voice wins. The cello sort of, is sucked into it. And what was here becomes... which is it's the same, but it sounds so different. People never know that it's the same thing. It's a stroke of genius, that. And so we're left with this anger. So what is going to happen? Is it going to go with the bad guys or the good guys, as it were? And the cello sort of listens and ruminates, and then it decides. We don't know where we are. We're in C sharp major, which is miles away in terms of relationship from the tonic. And then... can't we get back? It sort of says, please, can we go home? And from that point on, it's sort of, we feel the way back, and then it has wonderful little... Schumann is his little transitional passages, either between movements or between sections, that are just so magical. And here... where are we going to go? Aha! And then the Valensky. And then we get home to the recapitulation. The theme is back. We're in love again. And all is well. And then we have the slow movement, which is perfect. F major is always his key of happiness or reassurance, or there's something very special about the key for him. And indeed, this is an incredibly special moment. It's got a solo cello, and it's in the orchestra, in duet with cello. It's again a love duet, and it starts with a falling fifth, which is supposed to be his Clara interval. All these falling fifths. Oh, it's so beautiful. Slow movement, but very short. It's just absolutely perfect as it is. And then we have another amazing transition, which the second flute starts. And then... first flute. It's like sighing, remembering. And then he says, no, I don't want to leave my slow movement. I don't want to leave my paradise. But it does. And we get we have a stormy sort of exchange. And that takes us into the last movement, which again is full of joy. And again, a lot of Clara intervals, it seems. Then cello trading back and forth with the winds. And then a gorgeous development which brings in little tiny sort of fragments from the first movement and starts with a good Beatles modulation. It's he was obviously influenced by the Beatles. And that's wonderful development, which again leads us back, as developments do, to recapitulation, all the material. And then we have incredibly original accompanied cadenza towards the end. Schumann had been studied Handel's music a bit, and there's a sort of real recitative. Very noble, and that just melts into G minor, which we've hardly seen at all through the whole piece. And we have these pizzicati from the strings like raindrops. It's gorgeous, and it leads us back to not A minor, in which we started, but A major. And he even brings in the scary motif from the first movement. Now as if to say, the demons are gone. I can cope with them now. And it ends. Enjoy. Philharmonia is a lovely orchestra. I probably played with them more than with any other London orchestra. I'd recorded the music of John Tavener with them, and that's a lot of very slow playing. And of course, recording is a lot of sitting around and things. Philharmonia were perfect, their attitude. It was great. They were lovely, and they've always been really welcoming. I've got a few friends there. And it's a very special orchestra with a very nice atmosphere.